Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Nicole and I have my colleague Nikki here. Nikki is a customer success partner at Big Road and she knows a lot about transitioning to ELDs. We're going to be running today's webinar, a look at ELD trip sheets. We've had a lot of questions come in about what electronic logging devices, better known as ELDs, will record and what the new ELD logs will look like in comparison to the AOBRD logs. These are all great questions for us to cover today, especially because the ELD mandate deadline is only 50 days away. This means that if you haven't planned your transition to AOBRDs or ELDs yet, you're running out of time and you need to get sorted out now. You need to give yourself enough time to adjust to this new way of logging before the December 18th, 2017 deadline arrives. It's going to be here before you know it. Before we get started, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. We'll be recording today's webinar and posting the video on the Big Road blog. You can visit our blog at blog.bigroad.com and you'll find recaps here of all of our previous webinars as well as information on what's happening in the industry, including new rules, regulation changes, and ELD mandate news. We post new content here twice a week and it's a really great source for industry news and an easy way to keep yourselves up to date. If you submitted questions with your webinar registration, we've done our best to answer them throughout the presentation. And if you have questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the lower right side of the window. At the end of the webinar, I'll open the floor for a question and answer session. And during this time, Nikki and myself will answer all of the questions that you've submitted. Along with the webinar recording, I'll also post on the blog a recap of all of the questions that were asked and provide more detailed answers with links to any relevant content that will help you out. And tomorrow you'll be sent a follow-up email with a link to the recording and answers to the questions. Feel free to share this with anybody who might have questions about the ELD mandate. Okay, let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover in today's webinar. First, we will briefly discuss the ELD mandate itself, why it's being implemented, and some updates to the mandate. Then I'm going to talk about some updates to the exemption rules. I'll show you an example of an AOBRD versus an ELD trip sheet and go over how they differ from one another. We'll talk about what you need to know in order to be compliant by December 18th, 2017. And finally, why you should be transitioning to ELDs now rather than later. And then we'll end the webinar by answering the questions that were submitted before and during the webinar. So ELDs have been mandated in order to better enforce and keep track of hours of service regulations while preventing fatigued driving and ultimately making the roads a safer place for everyone. The FMCSA has also mandated ELDs to make it easier and faster to accurately track, manage, and share records of duty data. The ELD mandate is coming up fast. It's on December 18th, 2017, and that's less than 50 days away. There were a lot of rumors going around that the mandate would be delayed, but it looks like that's not going to happen. OOBRD has made several attempts to delay the mandate, but none of them have been successful. After their petition was denied by the Supreme Court and their proposed bill to delay the ELD mandate was voted down, the ELD mandate is definitely set to take effect on December 18th, 2017. And there have been a number of other attempts to have the ELD mandate delayed or thrown out completely, but none of those have been successful either. However, there is going to be a slightly phased-in approach to the ELD implementation. So the FMCSA recently announced that drivers without an AOBRD or FMCSA certified ELD in their vehicles by December 18th, 2017 will not be put out of service for not having the proper device for now. But an important thing to note here is that this doesn't mean that there's not going to be a penalty. Inspectors will still be citing drivers in their roadside inspection reports and fining them if they are not compliant with the ELD mandate after December 18th, 2017. So these fines will likely be pretty hefty and they're definitely not something that you're going to want to deal with. By April 1st, 2018, drivers must have an FMCSA compliant device so a grandfathered AOBRD or an ELD in their vehicles. And if they do not, at that point they will be put out of service. Trust me, you do not want to wait until the April 1st, 2018 deadline to get an ELD. You're risking a pretty hefty fine and write-up if you do, and it's really just delaying the inevitable. The ELD mandate is still coming, and you'll need to install an ELD in your truck. We'll talk about this a little bit at the end of the webinar. So one question that we get all the time from customers is, does the mandate even apply to me? So let's start by talking quickly about some ELD exemptions. The first exemption is drivers who aren't currently required to keep records of duty status. For example, short-haul drivers would not need to run an ELD unless they run outside of the short-haul classification. Next is the 8 and 30 rule, and this is for drivers who are required to keep a record of duty status, but for no more than 8 days in a 30-day period. So the important thing to remember here is that this is a rolling window of 30 consecutive days and not a 1-month period. So before deciding that you are exempt, you'll need to make sure that you never go over 8 days in a consecutive 30-day period. So next is the drive-away, tow-away operation exemption. So if the vehicle that you're driving is part of the shipment, so it's empty and for sale, lease, or repair, then you are not required to use an ELD. And the reason for this is that the FMCSA does not expect you to carry multiple connectors with you in order to have something that works with every vehicle, as you usually don't know what you're going to be driving until the day of. There's also the pre-model year 2000 exemption. So anyone driving a CMV with an engine model year of 1999 or prior will not need an ELD and can continue to create their record of duty status in the same way that they are today, paper or electronic logbook. So this rule has been recently clarified as recently as the summer, actually, to note that it applies to the engine model year and not the body of the vehicle. And this is because the technology and connections aren't compatible with older engines. It's going to be too difficult and costly for the FMCSA to expect drivers to comply with older engines. And then finally, there's the 100 or 150 air mile exemption. So if you're a local driver who only drives within a 100 air mile radius of your starting point, you don't currently need to keep paper logs, and therefore you're not going to need an ELD. This also applies to non-CDL freight drivers who drive within a 150 air mile radius of their starting location. So these exemptions are very specific, and most of you will need to comply with the ELD mandate. There are also a couple of new exemptions that have been recently granted by the FMCSA. So the first is for drivers who drive rental trucks. The new exemption states that you do not have to be compliant with the ELD mandate if you are driving a property carrying commercial motor vehicle rented for 8 days or less. So this is similar to the 8 and 30 rule. For the next 5 years, the FMCSA is also granting 2 more exemptions. The first, drivers using mobile device-based ELDs, so those running on a phone or tablet, can change their duty status outside of and away from their vehicle without an annotation. And previously, drivers could only change their duty status while in a vehicle that was running. The second one is carriers are permitted to do multiple yard moves without having to re-enter yard move on the device. Both of these last exemptions may be discontinued by the FMCSA at any time. For now, they're set up as exemptions. And just to note here, mobile device-based ELDs, they still need to have an engine-connected component. So that device would be something like our DashSync ELD, which has a piece of hardware that you connect to the ECM of your vehicle, and then it connects via Bluetooth or some other source to your mobile device. Okay, so AOBRDs and ELDs are both engine-connected devices that are compliant with the upcoming ELD mandate. However, there are some differences in what they record and display. An AOBRD is required to read truck, shipment, and other carrier information, as well as an hours of service summary, duty status changes, vehicle location, drive time, and device malfunctions. ELDs must record all the data that we touched on quickly in the last, or just now, sorry, in addition to recording intermediate driving events, CMV status, so powering on or off and logging in or out, diagnostic data and engine malfunctions, as well as unidentified driving records. In general, electronic logging devices are more restrictive and the rules surrounding them are more specific than they are with AOBRDs. In the next few slides, we're going to highlight the differences in the way that each device records information. So AOBRDs record a vehicle's location at each change of duty status. There is no specification on how accurate the location has to be, and it can be manually entered by the driver. With ELDs, the location needs to be automatically recorded anytime there is a change in duty status, as well as every 60 minutes while driving, when the engine is turned on or off, and at the start and end of yard move or personal conveyance mode. So the location needs to be accurate to within 1 mile while on duty driving. However, the location only has to be accurate within 10 miles in personal conveyance mode in order to offer drivers some privacy. So it's going to be tracked to the nearest town or city rather than the precise GPS location. Another example of how much more restrictive an ELD is than an AOBRD is the way they deal with duty status changes. An ELD is much more automated than an AOBRD, which means that there's also much less flexibility. For example, with an ELD, if a driver's vehicle has stopped moving for 5 consecutive minutes and the driver has not responded to a prompt within 60 seconds, their status will automatically be changed to on duty, not driving. Whereas an AOBRD is not required to change a driver's duty status when the vehicle is no longer in motion. Personal conveyance is when you're using your unladen commercial motor vehicle for a personal reason. It's dealt with similarly in both AOBRDs and in ELDs. You are considered to be off-duty in both. However, the difference is in how specifically your location data and other vehicle information is recorded during this time. Every single vehicle event, both off-duty and on, is recorded and displayed in an ELD. An AOBRD does not record this information, or does not display this information except to say that you have changed your status to personal conveyance and the location of the vehicle. Yard move is there for those instances where you're parked in a yard and asked to move your vehicle. You need to move to accommodate other drivers, or you're making small moves in a shipping yard. So you just need to move a little bit and you're not really driving. Yard move allows you to move your vehicle a short distance, and with Big Road this is 5 miles at a time with no maximum speed. And you are able to use multiple instances of yard move if you require to. When running an ELD, you will need to be put in on-duty status in order to use this function. But with an AOBRD, you're still able to use yard move without it affecting your hours of service. So this is one of the many bonuses of maintaining the use of an AOBRD until 2019. So a lot of you will want to know what is available to edit and what isn't in an AOB versus in an ELD. Essentially, in an AOBRD, you can edit pretty much everything except for your actual drive time. Drive time is one of those things that's pretty firm in both. With an AOBRD, you can't edit drive time unless the driving was done in error, and with an ELD, you can't edit it at all. With an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location and you can change an event, so you can adjust your duty status from on to off or from on-duty driving to personal conveyance or yard move. With an ELD, you can't really change anything that has been automatically recorded. From the web application, there are a few very limited edits that you or an administrator will be able to make, but they'll need to be annotated, meaning that you need to say why they were edited. For example, you can change your duty status from off-duty to on-duty, not driving, with a note that explains that you logged training time incorrectly as off-duty. The edit and annotation need to be verified by a driver from inside the app, and the edit is not accepted until it's confirmed from the mobile application. And then the record of duty status needs to be resubmitted. So other than those limited edits, once an event has been recorded in an ELD, it's virtually set in stone. So this is another great reason to stick with an AOBRD for a little while, as it's kind of a stepping stone into connected logging while you or your drivers get adjusted to the restrictive new rules. So that brings us to the next point. If you make an edit, how is it recorded and who can see it? Well, an AOBRD will record who made the edit and when, but will not obviously display the edit history to a DOT officer. An ELD, on the other hand, will record the same information and more, and that information will be readily displayed to DOT officers. And I'll show you an example of what each of these logs would look like to a DOT officer shortly. Not only can you edit more with AOBRDs, but they also display a great deal less information. And this means that DOT officers won't be able to see as much of what you're doing during the day when you use an AOBRD. Something that you'll also want to consider when making your choice is that DOT officers are very comfortable with AOBRDs and the way that they display data because they've been around since 1988. However, many are still largely unfamiliar with ELDs, so they won't be as rehearsed during inspections with them. And this means that until they're more comfortable with them, and this might take some time, inspections will go more smoothly when you use an AOBRD, and that gets you back on the road faster. Actually, drivers who use Big Road's DashLink report smoother inspections when enforcement officials see that they use Big Road's compliance solution. Inspectors even comment on how much they love Big Road because it's easy to use for them. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it over to Nikki, and she'll show you the differences between AOBRD and ELD trip sheets.
Probably the best way to explain the difference between AOBRDs and ELDs is to show you rather than to tell you. Here you will see an example of a driver's logs with an AOBRD. This is what will be visible to the DOT officer. In the log header, you can see the driver, carrier, trailer, and shipment information. Then there is your duty graph, followed by your duty status events, including time, location, duration, and status. Side-by-side comparison with ELD. This is what the same day of logs would look like with an ELD. So the log header and the duty graph will look the same, but as you can see, there are a great deal more events recorded and displayed. You can see under the duty graph that an ELD records and displays not only your duty status changes, but also the ELD status, CMV status, and each intermediate event. So every hour it records the time and location of your vehicle. If they are present, ELDs will also show a list of diagnostic events and malfunctions as part of your daily logs. As you can see, the detail of each event is also expanded. So under an ELD, each event will include the time, type of event, vehicle location, odometer reading, engine hours, and event origin. So whether it is automatically recorded or manually entered by the driver. Now let's switch back to slide 12. Let's look one more time at AOBRD daily logs. Now that you've had the chance to see what the logs look like when you're using ELD. Much less information, right? Also a lot less complicated and easier to read. And now we'll flip back to an ELD daily log for contrast. So as you can see, using an AOBRD will offer a lot more flexibility and simplicity than an ELD. And you'll be able to take advantage of that flexibility for 2 years after the ELD mandate deadline of December 18, 2017. By choosing a solution like DashLink, which can be used as an AOBRD and then easily updated to an ELD, you'll give yourself a smoother transition into connected logging and allow yourself to get comfortable with an engine-connected logging device before moving to the more restrictive ELDs. You also have a less bumpy inspection with DOT officers who haven't had the time to get comfortable with ELDs yet. Now, what do I need to know how to be compliant by December 18th? As part of the mandate, AOBRDs have been grandfathered in and can be used for 2 years after the ELD mandate. This means that if you have an AOBRD like DashLink installed before December 18, 2017, you can continue to use the AOBRD until December 16, 2019. After that, you will need to transition to full ELD mandate compliance. So why would you want to use an AOBRD until December 2019? Well, because as we've seen, they offer a lot more flexibility than ELDs. You can edit information much more easily, and your edits aren't displayed to a DOT officer during an inspection. AOBRDs are a great way to get used to engine-connected logging so that you can switch to an ELD when you are ready. Our Big Road DashLink is currently running as an AOBRD. If you have our DashLink, you will simply perform a software update in 2019 and you're running fully ELD compliant. It's that easy. No new hardware, no need to swap out the equipment. We'll be in touch with customers with more details about how to do this closer to the date. We recommend that you seriously consider this route. It makes transitioning a much smoother process, especially when dealing with less tech-savvy drivers or drivers that are resistant to change. Now, why transition now versus later? Although you may be tempted to wait until the last minute to purchase an ELD, this is not a good idea for a few reasons. Firstly, there's a good chance there will be a shortage of ELDs in December. With the extreme demand that companies will be facing, supply might not be able to keep up with demand. We're doing our best at Big Road to prepare for this, but we're still recommending that customers adapt the "it's better to be safe than sorry" approach. Get an ELD now while you know we still have stock. As we get closer to December 18th deadline, more and more ELD providers are popping up. This is definitely something to be wary of. When companies start showing up out of the woodwork like this, it's easy to end up choosing an unreliable provider. You want to make sure you've chosen an ELD that you can count on from a company that knows the trucking industry. Big Road has been around since 2011. We've spent years working with truckers to understand what you need and want in hours of service, and now an ELD solution. Transitioning to an ELD comes with a bit of learning curve, especially if you're switching from paper logs. Purchase an ELD now to give yourself time to get comfortable with the engine-connected logging before the ELD deadline. This will help you ensure there's no interruption in your service. Now, DashLink ELD. The solution that I recommended you guys look into if you need a compliant solution is our DashLink. You just plug in the DashLink device into the ECM of the truck, pair it with your Big Road mobile via Bluetooth, and you're ready to go. No expensive installation or permanent changes to your truck required. The device pulls the information directly from the computer within the truck so you can focus on driving and not logging. As we've covered, you can run DashLinks as an AOBRD until December of 2019. If before that you want to be fully ELD, you can flick on the switch. You can control when you want to transition from AOBRD to ELD. Some of you already are Big Road customers, which means that you're familiar with our mobile and web app. This will make the transition to the DashLink really easy and there's no need to learn new software.
Thank you, Nikki. So before we end the webinar, I just want to quickly talk about how Big Road can help make the ELD mandate a little more affordable and even put some money back into your pocket. We've launched the new Big Road Referral program where it literally pays to have friends. If you're an existing Big Road customer, you might already be referring your friends to Big Road. Well, this program gives you the opportunity to get paid for letting people know about us. If you're not a current customer but you're looking for Big Road for a compliance solution, you can still take part of this program. I'm guessing that you have trucker friends, and this is a great opportunity for you all to make some money while getting ELD compliant. So it's really easy. You sign up to participate in the program by visiting bigroad.com/rewards, and then you refer your friends with your unique tracking code. If a friend that you referred purchases Big Road's DashLink ELD using your tracking code, you'll get a $75 reward and they'll get a $25 reward. To learn more about the program and to sign up to participate, check out www.bigroad.com/rewards. And the web address is right on the page there, so I'll give you a minute to write it down if you'd like to. Okay, so that wraps up our webinar. If you have any questions that weren't answered during the webinar, please enter them into the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And while we're waiting for those to come in, there's a few things that you can take advantage of. If you're interested in learning more about Big Road Solutions, please feel free to reach out to your account manager and they'll be happy to help you. So let's dive right into questions. Nikki and I will start by answering the questions that you submitted before the webinar, and then we'll also answer some of your questions that are coming in now. So the first question is, will they require that ELDs be connected to the ECM of your vehicle, and will we be able to set our own parameters? So our DashLink ELD plugs into the ECM of your vehicle, and this makes it very easy to install, which is important to consider when you're choosing an ELD. Some providers have devices that must be hardwired to your truck in order to work. Once the DashLink is plugged into the ECM, it will automatically record drive time based on when your engine is running. And this means that some of the data that you've used, that you used to have to enter manually, is now being recorded automatically. So that's one less thing for you to worry about every day.
How can an ELD be used by non-daily drivers, like part-time drivers? First, check if your drivers are exempt. They may be eligible for the 8 and 30-day consecutive. Don't drive for more than 8 days in a 30-day period. If not, they can use DashLink the same way as any driver does. They'll plug the DashLink into the ECM of their vehicle, log into the Big Road mobile app, and they're good to go. DashLink will sync with the engine to record drive time and send this data over to the Big Road mobile app to produce accurate, easy-to-read logs.
Will the Big Road mobile app alone be enough, or will a DashLink also be necessary? So the free Big Road mobile app is an electronic logbook, and that makes it easy for drivers to produce clean and inspection-ready logs. However, it is not an engine-connected device, and the ELD mandate specifies that the device needs to be connected to the engine. In order to be ELD compliant, you can pair the Big Road mobile app with our DashLink ELD, which is an engine-connected device. And together, they'll ensure that you're running in compliance with the ELD mandate.
We have only Class C vehicles. Do we still need to install ELDs? This is difficult for me to answer because the class of vehicles varies state by state. As well, Class of C vehicles have differences, license requirements in different states. As a high-level rule of thumb, if your driver is required to have a CDL to drive the vehicle, they'll likely need an ELD. Please give us a call at 1-888-305-8777 extension 1 to give us more details.
The next question we have is that we drive both DOT weight-restricted trucks and non-DOT vans that are exempt throughout the week. How do you account for the non-DOT log days in Big Road? So our DashLink ELD is great for situations like this because of how easy it is to install and use. Basically, when you're driving a truck that needs an ELD, you can just plug the DashLink into the ECM of your vehicle, pair it with Bluetooth on your mobile device, and start driving. DashLink will sync with your engine and automatically record drive time based on your engine's status. If you're driving a vehicle that does not require an ELD, just unplug the DashLink. You can still use your Big Road mobile app as an electronic logbook to record your hours. And this is really nice because all of your logs are in one spot for both drivers who use an ELD and those who don't. A question that we have is, when can drivers approve edits made by administrators? So once you send in your daily logs to a fleet administrator, they'll go in, and when they're done their edits, you'll get a notification on your mobile app saying that you need to approve some edits and then resubmit your logs. So it'll happen pretty instantly, whatever schedule works with you and your fleet. With the ELD, are edits visible for roadside inspection or just within a company audit? So as you saw from the trip inspections sheets there, edits are visible from a roadside inspection. So if you have an ELD, anything that you have in there can be seen, but with an AOBRD, those edits are disguised or not displayed. Is DashLink an ELD? If not, what's next? So DashLink is a ELD ready AOBRD, which means that if you purchase it today and install it, it will be right away able to be used as an AOBRD. And when you want to use it as an ELD, all you have to do is a simple software update from inside the app. So you can use it as both.
Sorry, there was a question about unassigned driving. So currently, if you have unassigned driving, so perhaps the driver isn't recording his hours of service, it's on the weekend or what have you, you have to, obviously the DashLink will record those miles, so you have to please note on your log what those miles were when the driver goes in to start his shift with that odometer reading.
The next question is, will you make a version of Big Road specifically for passenger carrying vehicles? And right now we have no plans to make a Big Road DashLink specifically for passenger carrying vehicles. Sorry, I'm just reading through some questions here. Just give me a moment.
Okay, so I'm reading a question here. I'm just, if a mechanic needs to do some diagnostics with the DashLink plugged into the ECM port, all our DashLinks come with a pass-through connection, so the mechanic can just plug into the pass-through and he'll get the same diagnostics. So no need to uninstall. If you do need to uninstall, it's just a matter of unplugging, the mechanic plugging into the ECM port, and then replugging in the DashLink. It literally takes less than 30 seconds for that reconnection. Sorry. Now I have a question here. It's saying we have 3 Big Road DashLinks which seem to record as an ELD. I suggest that if you gathered that information by seeing the ELD trip sheets from this recording, you need to reach out to technical support and they can further look into that. Pretty much I would believe it's impossible, so we really need to dive into that and look up your account.
There's a question here, can drivers share the same DashLink just with different logins? Yes, because it's a plug-and-play device, it's easily transferable between trucks and drivers. If you have, let's say, 3 drivers that use the same truck, they can just log in, connect differently from their own apps with their own logins. I'm an owner-operator and I drive my truck from home to the shipping plant. How do you log personal conveyance? It's just a duty status change from within the app. So you'll just need to change your duty status from on-duty driving to personal conveyance mode.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how yard move is handled as well. We covered yard move with the DashLink enabled vehicle. It's just a duty status change, bearing in mind that yard move can be used only 5 miles. There's no speed parameter. Although you can reuse yard move, there is a 5-minute waiting period.
So some of our drivers live up to 3 hours from dispatch. What are the limitations to use in personal conveyance, if any?
If they're not in laden, meaning they don't have a load, they can use personal conveyance.
Somebody wanted us to repeat the number that I believe was in one of the last slides.
For tech support?
For tech support.
So it's 1-888-305-8777, extension 1 for technical support. For customer service, so if you already have an established account, you can dial 4 and one of the account managers can further assist and look into your account.
And that contact information is available on our website, but we'll also post it on our follow-up blog tomorrow for you to have a look at as well. Our CDL has not endorsed drivers required to have an ELD if they are short haul. They fall within the 100 to 150 air mile rule. So no, if you fall under one of the exemptions that we listed, then you don't need to have an ELD. Does DashLink need to be installed prior to December 18th? Yes, December 18th is the last day, or is the compliance deadline, sorry. And again, you won't be taken out of service until April 1st of 2018, but you will still be liable for violations and fines from those. The other thing about installing a DashLink before December 18th is if you just install it by then you can use it as an AOBRD, which we went over is a lot more flexible and friendly to use than an ELD is. But if you wait until December 18th or after to install your DashLink, then you'll have to use it as an ELD.
You will not get in trouble for showing sensor failures. If you are getting multiple sensor failures, you definitely need to reach out to our support team to find out if it's most likely a connection error, and they can perhaps you need a different plug, or you need to reconnect your cable more secure into your ECM port. That bearing in mind that you always need paper in the cab, regardless of whatever your ELD provider is. You need paper as backup if there is indeed a failure with your ELD.
So the next question we have is, do we have to demonstrate a set amount of time using an AOBRD before the 18th in order to be grandfathered in on the extension clause until 2019? No, you don't have to have a set amount of time. It does, the rule only specifies that it needs to be installed prior to December 18th, but installing it sooner rather than later just gives you a little bit more time to get comfortable with the way that it works. So it's always a good idea to go as soon as you can. Is the ELD upgrade available now?
I'm not really sure what you mean as far as ELD upgrade.
ELD from
AOBRD.
That is something that we are working on product with, and we'll have to get back to you as soon as that's ready, which should be in the coming days or weeks, right?
Yes.
If we are a fleet organization, what number should we give drivers to call 24 hours for support on the road?
So 1-888-305-8777, extension 1 is our technical support team.
We use dualies to pull and close trailers, and the days that we aren't pulling trailers but we go to work, how do we log that? So that should still be classified as on-duty driving time because you're using your truck to drive for work. So it should be logged in the same way that you log all of your other hours.
Yeah, so basically however you do it on paper, if you're on paper right now, you just reciprocate that on our mobile app.
Okay, so it looks like that's, oh, I have one more. So if I install DashLink in my trucks, I just don't turn on Bluetooth to use it as an AOBRD. No, you still have to turn the Bluetooth on. If you install a DashLink in your truck, you'll use it as it is, connected to your Big Road mobile app, and that will function as an AOBRD. In order to use it as an ELD, you'll need to do a software update from inside the app. So it'll just be a quick button tap, basically, from inside the app. If you don't connect your Big Road mobile app to the DashLink, then it's not going to be properly recording your hours. So you'll still need to do that even in AOBRD mode. So just to be clear, the DashLink at the current time is an AOBRD and not an ELD.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay, so it looks like that's it for questions. If there were any that we didn't answer, we'll be providing full answers with more details and links to some relevant sources for you on the Big Road blog tomorrow. And if you have any outstanding questions that weren't answered during the webinar, then reach out to your AM and they should be happy to assist you there. That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoons.